It was a dare, a challenge thrown down by my friends during a late-night gathering around a flickering campfire. We had been sharing ghost stories and urban legends, each one more spine-tingling than the last. As the flames danced and cast eerie shadows on our faces, someone suggested it: spend a night in the abandoned asylum. The asylum had been the stuff of local legends for as long as I could remember. It loomed on the outskirts of town, a decaying monolith of faded brick and broken windows. For decades, it had been a place of unspeakable horrors, a home to the mentally ill who had been forgotten by society. But that was long ago. The asylum had been closed and abandoned, its halls left to decay in silence. Stories of its haunting had persisted, however, tales of ghostly apparitions and disembodied screams that echoed in the night. As the fire crackled and the wind howled through the trees, my friends goaded me on. "Are you brave enough?" they taunted, their laughter mingling with the darkness that surrounded us. I couldn't resist the challenge. The prospect of spending a night in the abandoned asylum, of proving my bravery to my friends, was too tempting to pass up. So I agreed, and we made our plans to return the following weekend. The night we arrived at the asylum was cold and overcast, the moon hidden behind a thick shroud of clouds. We parked our cars at a safe distance and made our way through the overgrown grounds, the weeds and thorns tearing at our clothes and skin. The asylum's main entrance was a massive, rusted gate that creaked open with an agonized groan. As we stepped through, the world seemed to change. The air grew colder, and the very atmosphere seemed to thicken with a sense of foreboding. Inside, the asylum was a labyrinth of crumbling hallways and decaying rooms. The walls were stained and peeling, and the floor was littered with debris from years of neglect. The silence was deafening, broken only by the distant howling of the wind. My friends and I explored the asylum, our flashlights cutting through the oppressive darkness. We ventured into patient rooms with rotting beds and mold-covered walls. We entered common areas where once occupied chairs now sat empty, their occupants long gone. As the hours passed, the asylum seemed to come alive with malevolence. Shadows danced in the corners of our vision, and we could hear faint, ghostly whispers that sent shivers down our spines. But we pressed on, determined to prove our bravery. As midnight approached, we gathered in the asylum's main hall, a cavernous space with a high vaulted ceiling. It was said that this hall had been the site of unspeakable experiments, that the very walls held the tortured souls of those who had suffered within. As we stood in that chilling darkness, our flashlights flickering, a feeling of unease settled over us. The air grew colder, and we could see our breath in the frigid night. It was as if the asylum itself had come alive, its malevolence reaching out to envelop us. And then it began. A sound, faint at first, like the distant echo of a scream. We froze, our hearts pounding in our chests. The sound grew louder, closer, until it was as if the very walls of the asylum were screaming in agony. My friends and I exchanged terrified glances, our bravado shattered by the chilling reality of the moment. We turned to flee, to escape the asylum and its haunting, but the massive entrance gate was sealed shut, as if by some unseen force. Panic set in as we searched for an exit, but the asylum seemed to have become a nightmarish maze, its layout shifting and changing with each passing moment. The very walls seemed to close in on us, as if the building itself were alive and malevolent. As we stumbled through the darkness, the screams grew louder, more agonized. They were no longer distant echoes, but the tormented cries of the asylum's former inhabitants, the voices of the forgotten and the damned. In our desperation, we split up, each of us searching for a way out, a way to escape the nightmare that had become our reality. But the asylum seemed determined to keep us trapped within its decaying walls, its malevolence twisting our surroundings into a surreal and horrifying nightmare. As I wandered through the shifting corridors, the screams and whispers closing in around me, I couldn't help but wonder if the legends were true, if the asylum was truly haunted by the tortured souls of its past. I had scoffed at such stories, but now, As the darkness closed in, I couldn't deny the malevolent force that seemed to envelope me. Hours turned into an eternity as I wandered through the asylum's nightmarish labyrinth, my hope of escape dwindling with each passing moment. The screams and whispers grew louder, more insistent, until they filled my every thought, drowning me in a sea of torment. And then, just when I thought I could take no more, the malevolent force relented. The screams and whispers faded, and the darkness lifted, as if the asylum had released its grip on me. I stumbled out into the cold, pre-dawn light, my friends waiting for me outside the entrance gate. We never spoke of that night again, never mentioned the screams and whispers that had haunted us in the asylum's depths. But we all knew the truth, that we had ventured too close to a darkness that should never have been disturbed, that we had witnessed the malevolence that lingered within the abandoned asylum's decaying walls. And as I looked back at the asylum one last time, its windows broken and its walls crumbling, I couldn't help but wonder if it was truly abandoned, if the malevolent force that had trapped us within its nightmare had ever truly left. The morning light had never seemed so welcoming as it did when we finally emerged from the dreaded asylum. We were disheveled, shaken, and drenched in cold sweat. Our faces were ashen, our eyes haunted by the horrors we had witnessed. The asylum's malevolence had left its mark on us, a stain on our souls that would never fade. As we regrouped outside the massive rusted gate, our first instinct was to flee, to put as much distance as possible between ourselves and that accursed place. But our cars were still parked a considerable distance away, and it seemed that whatever malevolent force had locked the gate had released its hold. With trembling hands, we approached the gate cautiously. It swung open easily, as if it had never been locked at all. It was almost as if the asylum had wanted us to leave, as if it had grown tired of tormenting us. We didn't waste a second. We hurriedly made our way back to our cars, the asylum's chilling screams and whispers still echoing in our minds. It was a silent drive back to town, each of us lost in our own thoughts, haunted by the night's events. Over the following weeks, my friends and I tried to put the asylum behind us, to bury the memories of that night deep within our minds. We resumed our normal lives, going to work or school, trying to act as if nothing had happened. But the asylum's malevolence continued to linger, a shadow that refused to fade. It started with nightmares, vivid, disturbing dreams that left us drenched in cold sweat. In these dreams, we were back in the asylum, the darkness pressing in around us, the screams and whispers echoing in our ears. We would wake in the dead of night, our hearts pounding, our bodies covered in goosebumps. But the nightmares were just the beginning. Soon, we began to experience strange and inexplicable occurrences. Objects would move of their own accord, lights would flicker and dim, and eerie whispers would fill the air when we were alone. We tried to rationalize it, to dismiss it as mere coincidence or imagination. But deep down, we knew the truth, that the asylum's malevolent force had followed us home, that it had latched onto us like a parasite, feeding on our fear and torment. As the weeks turned into months, the asylum's grip on us grew stronger. We became obsessed with the nightmares and the strange occurrences, unable to escape the malevolence that had taken root in our lives. It was as if the asylum had become a part of us, a dark presence that refused to let go. We sought help from therapists and paranormal experts, but their efforts proved futile. The asylum's malevolence seemed to revel in our torment, taunting us with its malevolent laughter and defying all attempts at exorcism. Our friendships began to fray as the nightmares and strange occurrences continued unabated. We turned on each other, blaming one another for our shared misery. We became paranoid, distrustful, unable to escape the asylum's insidious influence. And then, one by one, my friends began to disappear. They would vanish without a trace, their cars left abandoned, their homes empty. It was as if the asylum had claimed them, as if it had exacted a terrible price for our intrusion. I was left alone, the last survivor of that ill-fated night. The asylum's malevolence still haunted my every waking moment, its whispers and screams a constant presence in my mind. I knew that I was next, that the asylum's darkness would consume me as it had consumed my friends. Desperation led me back to the asylum, back to the decaying building that had become my tormentor. I needed answers, needed to confront the malevolence that had taken root in my life. I couldn't escape the feeling that the asylum held the key to it all. As I entered the asylum once more, the malevolence closed in around me. The nightmares returned with a vengeance, the asylum's whispers and screams echoing in my ears. But I pressed on, determined to uncover the truth, to confront the darkness that had plagued me for so long. I ventured deeper into the asylum than I had ever gone before, searching for answers in the darkest corners of the building. And then, I found it. The source of the asylum's malevolence, the heart of its darkness. In a hidden chamber deep within the asylum's bowels, I discovered an ancient, tattered journal. Its pages were filled with the rantings of a madman, the writings of a former patient who had been driven to the brink of insanity by the asylum's horrors. As I read the journal, a terrible realization dawned upon me. The asylum had not been haunted by malevolent spirits or vengeful ghosts. It had been tainted by the madness of those who had suffered within its walls, their torment seeping into the very fabric of the building itself. The screams and whispers, the nightmares and strange occurrences, they were all manifestations of the asylum's malevolence, the collective anguish of those who had been forgotten and abandoned. I knew then what I had to do. I had to confront the asylum's darkness, to free it from the torment that had bound it for so long. I couldn't save my friends, but I could save myself, and perhaps in doing so, bring an end to the malevolence that had plagued us all. With the ancient journal in hand, I began a series of rituals, seeking to cleanse the asylum of its darkness, to release the tortured souls that had been trapped within. The process was grueling, and the asylum fought back with all its malevolent force. But I was determined, fueled by a desire to free myself from the asylum's grip, to put an end to the nightmares and torment that had plagued me for so long. As I completed the final ritual, the asylum's malevolence seemed to recoil as if in pain. The screams and whispers grew fainter, the nightmares less vivid. It was as if the darkness had been exorcised, its grip on the asylum finally broken. And then it was over. The asylum's malevolence had been defeated, its darkness vanquished. I emerged from the decaying building, the weight of the past finally lifted from my shoulders. But the scars remained, both physical and mental. I had been forever changed by my ordeal, marked by the horrors I had witnessed. The asylum had left its indelible mark on me, a reminder of the darkness that could lurk in the most unexpected of places. I would never forget that night in the abandoned asylum, the night I had confronted true evil and emerged, battered and broken, but victorious. It was a night that would haunt my dreams for the rest of my days, a night that would forever be etched in my memory as a testament to the malevolence that could lurk in the most unexpected of places. In the aftermath of my final confrontation with the malevolence that had plagued the abandoned asylum, I returned to a life that would never be the same. The nightmares had faded, and the strange occurrences ceased, but the scars remained, both the visible ones etched into the asylum's decaying walls, and the invisible ones that had marked my soul. The authorities had been alerted to the disappearances of my friends, but despite their best efforts, there was no trace of them. The asylum had swallowed them whole, leaving behind only the chilling emptiness of their homes and the unanswered questions that would haunt their families. I knew that the malevolence had been vanquished from the asylum, that the tortured souls of its past inhabitants had finally found peace. But the darkness that I had faced that night was not so easily forgotten. It had left an indelible mark on me, a constant reminder of the horrors I had witnessed. As the weeks turned into months, I became consumed by an insatiable curiosity. I needed to know more about the asylum's history, about the patients who had suffered within its walls, about the madness that had tainted the very foundation of the building. I scoured local archives, searching for any scrap of information that could shed light on the asylum's dark past. It was a painstaking process, one that led me deep into the annals of history, unearthing the forgotten stories of those who had once called the asylum home. I discovered that the asylum had been a place of suffering and neglect, a dumping ground for society's outcasts and undesirables. The patients had been subjected to inhumane treatments and experiments, their cries for help falling on deaf ears. The journal that I had found in the hidden chamber had belonged to a patient named Samuel, a man who had been driven to madness by the asylum's horrors. His writings detailed the unspeakable cruelties that had been inflicted upon him and his fellow patients, the dark rituals and experiments that had scared their minds and bodies. As I delved deeper into Samuel's writings, I became convinced that his madness had been a result of the malevolence that had tainted the asylum. The darkness had infected the patients, twisting their thoughts and driving them to the brink of insanity. But there was more to the story, a deeper, more sinister truth that I had yet to uncover. Samuel's journal hinted at a malevolent force that had been present in the asylum long before the patients arrived, a force that had been awakened by their suffering and had fed upon their torment. I couldn't ignore the implications of Samuel's words. It seemed that the malevolence that had tormented me and my friends had existed for generations, a malevolence that had claimed the lives and sanity of countless individuals. Determined to uncover the full extent of the asylum's dark history, I embarked on a journey that took me to forgotten archives and crumbling records. I interviewed the few surviving individuals who had worked at the asylum in its final years, hoping to piece together the puzzle of its malevolent past. What I discovered was a tale of unspeakable horror, a tale of dark rituals and forbidden knowledge, of a malevolent force that had been summoned by those who sought power and immortality. It seemed that the asylum had become a breeding ground for dark practitioners, a place where the boundaries of reality had blurred and the malevolence had thrived. As I delved deeper into the asylum's history, I realized that the malevolence had never truly been vanquished. It had merely lain dormant, biding its time, waiting for a new generation of victims to torment. I knew that I had to put an end to it once and for all, to confront the malevolence that had marked me as its target. Armed with the knowledge I had gained, I returned to the abandoned asylum, determined to confront the darkness that had plagued me for so long. As I entered the asylum's decaying halls, I could feel the malevolence closing in around me. The nightmares returned, more vivid and terrifying than ever. The whispers and screams echoed in my ears, a cacophony of torment. But I was not alone. I had come prepared, armed with the knowledge and determination to confront the malevolence head-on. I knew that the only way to banish the darkness was to confront its source, to expose it to the light of truth. As I ventured deeper into the asylum, I could sense the malevolence growing stronger, its grip on the building tightening. But I pressed on, guided by the knowledge I had uncovered, determined to uncover the truth and put an end to the nightmare once and for all. And then I found it, the hidden chamber where the malevolence had been born, the place where dark rituals and forbidden knowledge had given rise to the unspeakable horror that had plagued the asylum for generations. With trembling hands, I began a series of rituals, seeking to banish the malevolence from the asylum once and for all. The darkness fought back, its malevolent force lashing out with all its might. But I was not alone. I was armed with the truth, and that truth was a weapon against the darkness. As the rituals reached their climax, the malevolence let out a final, agonized scream, a wail of torment and despair. And then it was gone, banished from the asylum, its malevolent force vanquished. I emerged from the decaying building, the weight of the past finally lifted from my shoulders. The asylum was still abandoned and decaying, but the malevolence that had plagued it for generations was gone. I had confronted true evil and emerged victorious. But the scars remained, both the visible ones etched into the asylum's walls and the invisible ones that had marked my soul. The nightmares and the horrors of that night would never truly leave me, a constant reminder of the darkness that could lurk in the most unexpected of places. The abandoned asylum would forever be a place of haunting memories and unspeakable horrors, a testament to the malevolence that could dwell within the human heart and the darkness that could consume even the strongest of souls. In the wake of my final confrontation with the malevolence that had haunted the abandoned asylum, my life slowly began to return to some semblance of normalcy. The nightmares, the strange occurrences, and the chilling whispers had finally ceased, leaving me with a sense of uneasy peace. I couldn't escape the fact that the asylum had left its mark on me, both physically and mentally. The scars on my psyche ran deep, a constant reminder of the horrors I had witnessed and the darkness I had confronted. I knew that I would carry those scars with me for the rest of my life, but I was determined to find a way to move forward. As I began the long process of healing, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story, that the malevolence that had plagued the asylum had not been completely vanquished. The ancient journal I had discovered hinted at a malevolent force that had been summoned and fed upon the suffering of those who had been forgotten within the asylum's walls. I couldn't ignore the possibility that there were others like me, individuals who had faced the malevolence and survived. Determined to find answers, I embarked on a mission to track down any surviving individuals who had ventured into the asylum and faced its horrors. It was a difficult and often fruitless endeavor, as many had moved away or simply disappeared. But I persisted, driven by a need to uncover the truth and provide closure for those who had suffered as I had. Through countless interviews and tireless research, I began to piece together a larger narrative of the asylum's dark history. I discovered stories of other brave souls who had entered its decaying halls, each with their own harrowing tales of torment and survival. As we shared our experiences, it became clear that the malevolence that had plagued the asylum had not been a random occurrence. It had been summoned and nurtured by dark practitioners who sought power and immortality. The asylum had become a breeding ground for forbidden knowledge and unspeakable rituals, a place where the boundaries of reality had blurred and the malevolence had thrived. Together, we formed a support network, a group dedicated to uncovering the truth behind the asylum's horrors and providing closure for its victims. We delved into the ancient journal and other records, seeking to understand the dark rituals that had given rise to the malevolence and to ensure that it would never be summoned again. Our efforts were not without risk. The malevolence still lurked in the shadows, its remnants clinging to the asylum like a stubborn stain. We faced strange occurrences and eerie whispers, but we were prepared this time, armed with the knowledge and determination to confront the darkness. As we conducted our research and performed rituals to cleanse the asylum, the malevolence fought back with all its might. It was as if the darkness refused to be banished, as if it clung to the asylum's decaying walls with a tenacity that defied reason. But we pressed on, united in our mission to put an end to the malevolence's reign of terror once and for all. We knew that the darkness was a malevolent force that thrived on fear and suffering, and we were determined to starve it of the torment it craved. Months turned into years as we continued our efforts to cleanse the asylum and uncover the full extent of its dark history. It was a grueling and often thankless task, but we were driven by a shared sense of purpose, a desire to confront the malevolence that had marked us all as its victims. And then, one fateful day, it was over. The asylum's malevolence, the lingering darkness that had plagued us for so long, was finally banished. It let out a final, agonized scream, a wail of torment and despair, and then it was gone, vanquished from the asylum's decaying halls. We emerged from the building, the weight of the past finally lifted from our shoulders. The asylum was still abandoned and in ruins, but the malevolence that had plagued it for generations was no more. We had confronted true evil and emerged victorious, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of unity. The scars remained, both the visible ones etched into the asylum's walls and the invisible ones that had marked our souls. The nightmares and the horrors of that night would never truly leave us, a constant reminder of the darkness that could lurk in the most unexpected of places. But we had found closure, a sense of redemption for the suffering we had endured. The abandoned asylum would forever be a place of haunting memories and unspeakable horrors, but it was also a place of triumph, a testament to the indomitable human spirit and the strength that can be found in the face of true evil. As we looked back at the asylum one last time, We knew that its malevolence had finally been banished, its darkness dispelled. It was a place of closure, a place where the scars of the past could begin to heal, a place where the nightmares could finally fade into memory. And as we walked away from the asylum, our heads held high, we knew that we had emerged victorious, that we had confronted the darkness and found a way to move forward. The asylum would forever be a part of our history, a dark chapter in our lives, but it would no longer define us. We had faced true evil and emerged stronger, united by a shared experience that had tested our limits and pushed us to the brink. We had found closure and redemption in the face of unspeakable horrors, and we were determined to use our knowledge and experience to ensure that the malevolence that had plagued the asylum would never again be summoned into the world. The abandoned asylum would remain a place of haunting memories and unspeakable horrors, but it was also a place of triumph, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of unity in the face of true evil. And as we walked away, we knew that we had finally brought an end to the nightmare that had haunted us for so long.